Well, here we are. After game number one, we head into game number two with the Toronto Raptors up 1-0 in the NBA Finals. But before we get into all that, a huge shout out once again. Leo, what's going on?
It's that shirt, man. It's that's an ugly shirt.
What? Boston College hockey. It's not basketball, it's hockey.
It's just an ugly shirt, man. That's all.
Leo, don't get him started, or else he'll get on here and start singing "On for Boston" or something.
Yeah, no, it's for Boston. For Boston.
Yeah, whatever.
I won't even break out the Dropkick Murphys version of it.
Is that a Division I program?
Oh my goodness! Come on, come on, Hawk! Come on. All right.
Well done, Jack. Well done.
I cannot believe it. All right, so thank you to everybody that is out there working in all the essential businesses that are allowed to stay open. Certainly appreciate it, and thank everyone out on the front lines, doctors, nurses, those working in the grocery stores, and those delivering groceries to Eric Smith's house, everybody that is out there doing that. And we cannot thank you enough during these unprecedented times and difficult times. And banding together is so key. Leo, I know how important that is to you, right? And with your family and your 4 boys and wife, Jamie.
Yeah, I mean, right now, I think it's, it's an opportunity here. A lot of people, obviously, there's a lot of people struggling in a lot more ways than health, financially, everything. And, my heart goes out to everybody. But this is also a time, some people say, hey, I'm bored. Well, you know what? It's good to be bored. It's better to be bored than sick. It's better to be bored than going through a lot of different things that people are going through. And this is a time that when we can spend some time with our family and enjoy that time, enjoy it.
We all have children, Sherm, Eric, Jack, Jonesy. We all have loved ones that we think of. And so just keep everybody right there in your heart during these times. And let's talk about some fun times. I actually brought out my calendar from a year ago, and May 30th was game number 1 of the NBA Finals. It was a Thursday. And then May 31st, the next day, Friday at 1 p.m., I have written down 1 p.m. oath. It's the day that the Devlin family became Canadian citizens. So
Hey.
you guys all remember that process going through it. We were living through that.
That's why you knew the Capitals, right? In the last episode, they were fresh in your mind, right? You could reel them off from Ottawa, from Toronto, like you were all over it.
Well, the funny thing is that when we took the test, my wife actually got a 20 out of 20 on the test because she's a smart one, as we all know, in the group. And I actually missed 19 out of 20.
How did you miss the answer A? Come on.
It was a lot of fun. And you guys we were quizzing one another prior to the test and having some fun with all that stuff. But it was a very special day for us on May 31st. And
where did you get the tattoo, by the way? Where did you end up deciding to get that Maple Leaf tattoo?
The Maple Leaf tattoo? I cannot show it to you.
Well, we can't see it, E, so that tells you something.
But here's the amazing thing is that you're there, you take the oath, and there was 103 families from 27 different countries. And you think about everyone making the decision to come to Canada for a lot of different things, why your parents decided to make that journey. And you look around, and it was truly emotional, as you guys can imagine, because why do you make that move? It's for a better life, right? And this country's been great to my family, and we can't thank you enough. And it was truly a moving experience. And that was May 31st for me. In between game 1 and game 2, Saturday night was game 2 of the NBA Finals. And kind of take us into that. It's always one of those things, Jack, as you know, game 1, and then here come the adjustments, game 2, Golden State.
Well, I think a few things that jumped out at me that you knew you were going to get Golden State's best effort. Would they have like 22, 23 series in a row, if I'm not mistaken, where they won a road game? So this is a team that has a lot of pride and know-how in terms of how to win on the road. And, everyone gets so caught up in how wonderful Golden State is in terms of balls movement and shooting the three and Clay and Steph and all that. But the reality is what's made them great during this whole stretch is their defense. And if you look at game 2, the thing that I was really impressed with, Matt, you mentioned when we were chatting about game 1 that the Raptors made 13 threes in game 1. When you look at game 2, they held the Raptors under 30% from three-point range. And they held the Raptors under 38% from the field overall. So Golden State really dialed in defensively. Draymond was better, Iguodala, Clay, and company. I just thought they brought their best effort on the defensive end. And then that run, what was it, late second, early third, where the Raptors just went into a major drought. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was 20-0 or 21-0 run. But again, as much as we're focusing on Toronto, give the Warriors credit. I really thought they played with desperation and they guarded. And the Raptors, in spite of all that, was still right there at the end of the game. And I thought it was a really poorly officiated game as well. And neither team could get a rhythm going. Jonesy?
Jacko, it's funny because we harken back to the last episode when, you talk about seeing a guy on film as opposed to seeing him live. And I really think that there was part of Toronto that caught Golden State, part of them, a very small part, that caught them by surprise. And they just adjusted physically to what was going on. And you talked about the shooting percentages and how hard they played and the little things they did. I mean, Golden State shoots 46%. They move the ball a little better. Their defense is better. They move the ball a little better. They do a little bit more. And then that run was one of those runs, classic Golden State, where people go, oh my goodness, this is where they blow it open. And we've spoken to the resiliency of the Raptors. They kind of kept hanging around. And let's face it, they were up in the first half. Toronto was up. But I just thought, they always talk about game 2 of the series as the one where you see the biggest adjustments. I thought maybe Golden State figured something out. But even with that game went right down to the wire, and it really could have gone either way. Iguodala makes that shot basically on a blown defensive assignment to seal the game.
I remember going into the game, and I think it probably piggybacks on both what both you and Jack said, Jonesy, is that before the game, Steve Kerr was talking a lot about, and I remember the quote directly where he said, "They remind me of us." And I think that speaks to what Golden State has done for the last X number of years, where while everybody gets caught up, as Jack said, in how awesome their offense is, it's defensively where they've shut people down and been as equally good, if not better, than what their offense is. And that's what Toronto was heading into the game. Jonesy, I know this is always your number you talk about on our radio broadcasts all the time, with 45% sort of being the watershed mark. And I believe the Raptors going into that game were 11-3, 11-4, I believe, in 14-15 games,
yep,
holding opponents under 45% heading into that game. They were averaging in the postseason a percentage I believe was under 42%. Their opponents shooting heading into that game throughout the duration of the postseason. Their defense was so good that as much as we've been talking about how good their offense has been and their three-point shooting, it's their defense. And they were beating Golden State, at least in game 1, at their own game in a sense. And I think that the Warriors kind of had that wake-up call then heading into that game 3 that, all right, we've now seen a bit of the blueprint. If we didn't pay attention to what they were doing the first 3 rounds, we got a taste of it in game 1, and we know now what we need to do and what it's going to take to beat this team. Because one of the other things Kerr said that he felt reminded him of his Warriors team is how many guys on the Raptors can handle the ball, move the ball, pass the ball, set guys up, and how they can beat you with so many different weapons.
Sherm, how did you see this one coming in 1-0 Raptors, and you would expect Golden State to respond?
Well, I didn't think that Golden State was as rattled by losing game 1. I mean, they threw
Good point.
the idea that Pascal had the game of his life. He wasn't going to be able to perform like that again. They didn't feel like Pascal could do that. Number two, I thought that Golden State understood that the way the Raptors were very successful throughout the course of the season and in the playoffs was when they got out in transition, they were a deadly team. You could not keep up with them. They had multiple guys that could run the floor and score at the basket. Well, it seems like 7 points isn't a big deal, but they reduced the transition number for the Raptors by 7 points from 24 to 17 in that game. So they executed on that level. And then I also think when you talk about, Jack, you talk about the defense of Golden State, they also were able to, because they stayed consistent on the three-point line and their defense got better in game 2, they were able to neutralize the three-point line for the Raptors and really take away some of the looks that they got in game 1. So I thought that Golden State did a great job really adjusting. And in a game of possessions, as you know, Leo, it takes a few other guys making some buckets. Andre Iguodala making some buckets. Guys just scoring the basketball a little bit more when your defense is better in a tight game that's going to give you the edge. And I thought Golden State got help from the other guys. And the other thing is that run in the second quarter, that 18-0 run out of halftime, it was preceded by a Steph Curry 6-1 run to end the second quarter. That started the flow for Golden State. Going into the locker room, coming out at halftime, Leo, they showed that they were a confident bunch, feeling that they could take game 2 when they came out in the third quarter.
Well, especially if you think about how that game started, they missed 20 of the first 28 shots. But what do we say about the Raptors this season? They're champions. They have that championship mentality, right? So that's what the Raptors are facing now. So there was no way these guys were going to make some adjustments and come back in game 2. But a couple of things did jump out at me. When the Raptors don't shoot the ball well, if you don't shoot the ball well against Golden State, you're helping Golden State, right? And, they play it so well off of missed shots and poor possessions. They really hurt you there. The second thing is, and I think I take this as a positive for Toronto. Yeah, Golden State had that 18-0 run to start the third. But when they do that against most teams, it's over. You see it in teams' eyes. They're just going, oh, man, and it happens quick. It's fast. Before you know it, you're out of the game. And there's no recovery. Well, throughout, and not just in this game, but throughout the series, whenever Golden State had these runs, the Raptors came back. It was okay. They could deal with it. And the Raptors had their own 10-0 run, if you remember, to bring it to within 2 before Iguodala hits that game winner. So, to me, that's what impressed me, that I was just looking at the Raptors' eyes when the Golden State run this run, and they were okay. Nobody's okay when Golden State goes on those runs, and the Raptors were okay. So I felt pretty good about that, Matty.
Yeah, it's interesting. I go back to, that game, and I don't think anybody thought that this was going to be a sweep. It's Golden State. You think about the pedigree, whether Kevin Durant was on the floor or not, and all that storyline was swirling, as we know, right? When was he going to return? Was he going to return? And so there's a lot of different dynamics that were happening. Raptors ultimately end up losing. All of you have spoken about, why that was, right? And so the game ends, and it becomes one of those moments where, to me, again, and this is a common theme and thread for this team, how resilient they are, how together they are. Nick Nurse comes in, Raptors lose, comes into the locker room, and he says, hey, they got one from us. Let's go get one there, and let's take home court back. And somebody who is a lead by example, doesn't say that much, lives in the moment, right? Been many stories about all that, examples. He speaks up. And what is a defining moment in the NBA Finals? Coach says, hey, let's go get one there. We got home court back. And he says, beep that, fill in the blank. Let's go get them both. Sure. When your best player says that in the room, what does that do for a team?
It makes you a believer. That's what it does. And I even think for Nick Nurse, I mean, the idea is you go and you steal a game on another team's floor. You've done your job. That's how we all think. That's how a lot of people think. But the greatness of Kawhi is not thinking about taking one game. And I think that was a learning moment for Nick Nurse as well. The messaging was very different than what he was relaying to his team, where Kawhi was saying, bleep one, let's get them both. And I'm sure for Nick Nurse, that added confidence to himself. And look, the bottom line was Kawhi at this point knew what was on his shoulders. He understood that a lot of what was happening now resides on his plate. And he didn't shy away from it. He took it on. And I think understanding that your leader is saying, hey, let's go get two. Everybody in that locker room, training staff, anybody who heard him say that automatically felt like getting two was a possibility because the best player in the NBA that was in the finals said that they could do it. And I think when you have that guy in your locker room, when you got the baddest man in the fight, you swing a bit harder.
You know, I think it kind of speaks to as well the fact that, you know, a lot of people speak, and I'm talking not just talking athletes, just life in general. A lot of people speak just to be heard, just to hear their own voices. When the quiet guy steps up and says something, you sit up and take notice that much more. When that kid in the classroom, and I'm sure, you know, Jones can talk about that angle too from his years in education. When the quiet kid is just sitting there, but then actually, you know, gets the confidence or the stones or feels motivated enough to actually say something, you perk up a little bit more because you're not used to hearing it. It's not as though Kawhi was a mute all year. Listen, I think we can all say from a media perspective, when it was time to do interviews, post-game interviews or game day previews, he was always there. He stepped up to the mic, but he might not have enjoyed doing it. But when he spoke, he answered questions. He answered them intelligently and methodically, and he thought about what he was saying. He didn't just give you cliches. He didn't just give you athlete speak or whatnot. So if he's doing that with the media, I can only imagine the impact that it has within the locker room when he's just kind of going about his business, going about his day, focused on the task at hand, but then steps up in that type of moment and gives that type of battle cry, that type of rally. I think you perk up that much more as a teammate, as a coach, as a member of the organization, and you believe it, not just hear it. You truly believe what he's saying.
Kawhi Leonard in Game 2 played really well. I mean, he had a big game and unfortunately didn't get as much help as he needed. And for him to kind of make that statement after the game to his team, I think kind of empowered everybody to say, hey, man, we're all in this together. And when I reflect on the fact that they blew out Golden State without him, that was one of those 22 games that Kawhi didn't play with. And Golden State had a fully healthy team. And you look at the fact that the Raptors had won 4 games on the road in the playoffs and have had a great run on the road as a road team for years. I think and particularly then with Klay Thompson highly doubtful for Game 3, I mean, come on now. This is your chance. And I just think that not only leading by example, but saying something that direct really gets everyone's attention. And to me, when I look at the Raptors, I felt good about them because every series they won a road game, and you had every right to have confidence. And to me, I think, Leo, when you look at this, it was one of those trips that you went on and you were excited about because you were like, you know what? The Raptors could get a stranglehold of this series. They have the ability to do this.
Oh, I don't think there's anybody that, at least in this group right here, that had any doubt about what the Raptors were able to do on this road trip. I thought they were ready to go. And, you know, I think to that point when Kawhi says we're going to get 2, right? He's also one of those guys that's locked in and realized to get 2, you got to get 1, right? And this is one of the great things about this team. Yeah, that's the mentality. We're going there. We're coming back with 2, but we got to get Game 3 and then Game 4. And that's the great thing about it. You know, Kawhi, he doesn't say a lot. He leads by example. Those words are meaningful. But this is the team right now that understood how they have to play. And they understood how they have to do it defensively. And they understand that, again, as I mentioned, you know, if you have bad offense, you feed them. And you can't feed them. So this is. I think the Raptors were very focused, understood exactly what they needed to do. And Jones, have you seen this? You've seen how focused this team can get. Yeah. You've seen the impact of a Kawhi on the floor with every one of these guys.
To me, Leo, that was just validation for the other guys in the room that this guy, our best player, thinks and knows we are a really good team. We're not just going there to survive and kind of, okay, win one and relax. We're going to get both of them. And it says to, I think it was Sherm that said it before. It says to Nick Nurse, it says to everybody there, I've been to the top of the mountain. We are close, and I know that we can get there. I know. So we're not just going there to kind of survive. And I just think, it's to me, it's validation. And then for those other guys in the room, the confidence comes from that same statement. Hey, here's our best player, and he's confident that we are good enough to go into that arena, which has been a graveyard for us. I mean, the Raptors won there in the regular season for the first time since 2004 when Kevin O'Neill was coaching them. And yeah, I know, Jacko, broken lamp and Jalen Rose broken hand, right? And there they are now going to that arena, and this guy thinks they can get both of them. He's confident. So I think that was a turning point. And again, he said it, and he went out and he led by example, and all the other guys were behind him. And we know what history says. They go and think about this. The Raptors win 4 games in the NBA playoffs, in the NBA finals. And they win 3 of them on the road in an arena where they hadn't won in 15 years. What does that say?
I do think, too, that there's a little bit of having really lived through it for the first time. It's a little bit understandable with all the demands of the NBA finals, why teams sometimes are successful on the road, because you are isolated away from everything and all those demands. I do think that is something that maybe we will talk about when we head into Game 3.
It's a great point, Matt.
There's one other thing that happened post-game. Janky D.
Oh.
Janky D, right? So E. Smith, jump in on Janky D and Steph Curry saying, the boxing one and all the different things that Nick and the Raptors were trying. What was your takeaway? And did that seep, you think, into a little bit of Golden State going, okay, wait a minute, what are they going to throw at us?
Well, I think there's that element. I will say this too. Initially, I think that his expression, I think, was taken by a lot of folks initially as he was angry or he was pissed off. He was upset about the fact that the Raptors did it. I think it was more just funky. It was a different word for funky. Janky D, different D. I'm not used to seeing it. I don't think that he necessarily meant that he felt that it was disrespectful, as a lot of people initially took it that way. I think it was the fact that, hey, they're showing us. They're willing to show us some different things. We're seeing some stuff that we haven't seen before. And now, Nick Nurse has played that mind game a little bit, I think, with them. They don't know what's going to be coming at them and what he's going to be pulling, what rabbit out of his hat, going back to his, days in Britain, days in the G League, days in high school ball, whatever it may be. All bets are off the table right now because it's just, hey, we're trying to stop you in whatever way it's going to take. And Jacko, I'm sure you've been through that and in the coaching ranks where you're just trying to come up with whatever game plan is going to work, whether it's funky, janky, different, or otherwise. What's going to allow me to stop and slow down the other team? And I'll do whatever it takes because I know I've got the buy-in from my players as well.
I think a lot of times NBA coaches kind of all do the same thing. In some way, shape, or form. It's all kind of base coverage. And quite frankly, if you don't have the team that's the favorite team, like if you're coaching like the Sacramento Kings and you take over a job like that, why would you come in and try to do the same thing that other teams are doing if you don't have the personnel? You got to be creative. And that's the thing I love about Nick Nurse. Just a few weeks ago when the Raptors played the Milwaukee Bucks, Stan Van Gundy was in town to call the game on the U.S. network TNT and had a long chat with Stan before the game. And he goes, I love Nick Nurse. He goes, because he coaches in the NBA unlike most of the other guys. He's willing to try anything. And to me, I think that says a lot. And Sherm is a player. I think when you look at that and you see that your coach is going to fight and scratch and claw and do whatever he can to put you in a position to win, it keeps you on your toes, and you kind of like that.
Well, guys, I think we can all agree that Nick Nurse is the ultimate player's coach. He's going to demand stuff from you. He's going to make you work, but he's going to give you what you need as a player to be successful, whether it might be no shoot-arounds, a day off of practice, a couple of days off, whatever you need to be at your top level. He's not going to fall into the trap of, well, we got to have shoot-around because everybody's having shoot-around. He doesn't do that. He's doing it the way that he feels it needs to be done. That speaks to his ability to prepare, to relate, to understand, and to be flexible. And those are sometimes the elements that coaches in the NBA don't actually have. They want to do it their way, and they want it to look a certain way. Well, Nick's not worried about that. And I think his creativity is so refreshing. Listen, sometimes the basic stuff that is overlooked is all that is necessary. And what we see with Nick Nurse is the ability at times to just clear the clutter. Let's not worry about everything in image. Let's just do what works, no matter what people say. And I think he did a great job of that last season, and he was doing a great job of that this season as well.
It's an excellent point, Sherm. The series now is tied 1 game apiece, and I look back, the Raptors, after losing that game on Saturday night, Monday, they flew to San Francisco to get ready for the final games at Oracle. Obviously, they'll come back later, go there again in Game 6, but a lot of history to talk about, a lot of other things leading into Game 3 of the NBA Finals that we'll get to. Leo, I know you want to say a special shout-out to, obviously, all the frontliners.
Yeah, I mean, so many people, and it's, the healthcare workers, the people when we go to the grocery store, the people that are all on the front lines, all doing the little things to, one, save us, make our life easier, doing all the things that, we couldn't survive without. So a big thank you to everybody out there. And for everybody else, hey, stay home, keep isolating, stay safe. The sooner we all do that, the sooner we all stay together, the sooner this passes.
Well said.
Absolutely.
We will see you guys again. Game 3. We got ourselves a series.